Welcome in episode 21 of New Wave Certified. I'm your host, John Larkin. I'm the owner of New Wave Performance. I'm a private trainer. I've been training athletes here in the area for over 5 years, and I've seen plenty of guys go on to be successful in not only their college careers, but also their high school careers as well. So we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. What to expect. We're going to talk a little bit about the culture here at New Wave Performance, what it's like to train here, and what to expect when you train here. We'll highlight the upcoming plyometric program briefly, and then we'll also talk about what happened in week 9 with the Kennedy versus Dallas Center Grimes game, and then also highlight some playoff teams that advanced to the playoffs. So they'll get a quick shout out, but other than that, if you haven't already, make sure you go cop your merch, New Wave Certified merch. They're available online on our website, www.newwaveperformance.com/shop. Go cop them now. They're almost sold out. So make sure you get yours before they're sold out. But without further ado, let's go ahead and let's get into it. Culture here at New Wave Performance. What does it entail, right? I was laying in bed the other night and I was thinking about it, after watching some competition, last Friday, and I was thinking there's a lot of people around here that, didn't have the season they wanted, or there were some people that exceeded, their expectations. And so I kind of took a peek and I'm like, all right, well, these people, they didn't do well, but these people did really well. And I'm trying to think what was the thing that separated them? What were some of the things that pushed this person on this side of the table? And things that stood out to me were the consistency, the guys that were consistent here, right? And then just the overall level of focus that they had with their team, right? So I'm trying to get to the point that, if you want to be a winner, right, you got to surround yourselves with other winners, right? And so I think that goes into a lot of building a culture, a matter of fact, a winning culture, right? You can't have a bunch of losers on your team and expect to have a winning culture, right? So that's kind of what we try to do here. I try to model what it's like to be a winner to my athletes when they come here, so that way they can go and be a winner and model for other athletes, that they're around with their team, right? So just developing that winning attitude, that desire to win, right? I think everybody has, a little bit of that just innately. We all want to win, but some people want it more than others. And so it comes down to, what are you willing to give up to become a winner, right? What are you willing to sacrifice? How much work are you willing to put in? And I talked about it in the summertime, right? About all these people that talk the talk, but not everybody was walking the walk. So, it's just interesting to kind of see how that played out. But, hindsight's always 20/20. But other than that, though, just building that winning culture, guys that want to come together, and athletes that want to come together to push each other to, again, become winners. And with that, we also try to teach what it's like to be a competitor, right? You want to talk about being a winner, right? You also got to learn how to be a good competitor. And what does that mean, really? I think being a good competitor just means that, well, you probably have heard the question before, do you hate losing more than you love winning? And I just kind of think that's ironic, because we just got done talking about winning. But for me, I hate losing a lot more than I like winning, simply because I'm ultra competitive. That's just who I am. I love to compete. I love to try to be the best at what I do, right? And so I try to model that for the athletes that come here, right? So every once in a while, we'll have some competitions, a lot of times it is for fun, because we like to have fun here while we're working hard. But I try to do what I can to keep it interesting and keep them competing when they're here. I always keep track of, the personal records and the times, and we'd have a little scoring system that we do in the fall and the winter time, especially, where our athletes, right, we do a big quote unquote draft where I take the entire training roster of the athletes that come here, right? I'll randomize them into like 4 teams. Usually there's like, like maybe 20 athletes per team. And you get a point for attending your session. You get a point for achieving a new personal record. And then you also get a point if you win a competition, right? So that goes into that competitiveness piece. Now, we talked earlier about winners wanting to surround themselves with other winners, right? And just leading by that example. If there's someone on your team that you notice has been kind of slacking off, you're more likely to say something to them because they're on your team, right? You want to win, so you want to try to get them to buy into that winning attitude and those winning behaviors. And that said, you can lose points. You can lose points if you don't attend your sessions. If you that's pretty much the only way you can lose points, actually. But I say all that to say that it's just a competitive environment that we try to establish, here at New Wave with the athletes that we get in. And I touched briefly on what it means to be athlete driven. And for me, I can lead a session. That's no problem. I try to coach as best as I can. And sometimes I like to step back and let another athlete explain, to someone else that might not understand, because I like giving those athletes an opportunity to be a leader. I like giving them the opportunity to try to coach and teach and help a teammate, because if they're going to do that here, they're much more likely to do that when they're with their team, like their actual school team or club team or whatever it is. And sometimes I feel like a change in perspective sometimes helps the athlete understand what I'm asking them to do, right? So, and then I think if you look at it from the other side too, if you're the athlete that's receiving the instruction from another guy there, athlete that you're training with, I think it just kind of goes back to leaning into that winning culture, you know what I mean, of guys, everybody trying to come together to achieve that common goal of getting better and becoming a winner, right? And so I saw that a lot with like the college athletes that were here over the summertime. I would be watching from afar, you know what I mean? And a lot of times, of course, I would explain the drill and I'd show the drill in the beginning, but then after a while, I'd kind of just step back and let them do their thing. And the best guys were always in the front, and they were always saying, hey, you're doing this, I need you to do this, you know what I mean, type thing. So, touching briefly on the college guys, they're doing really well. I know Cyrus, he was on the podcast, he just picked up his first Division I offer to a school in Tennessee. I know Miles is doing really good. He was actually just training here yesterday. He's going to be here today too. He's getting a lot of snaps, a lot of playing time in special teams, and a little bit on defense as well. PLYO, obviously dressing for the Hawkeyes. His career is going well. Coaches really like him. They see a lot in him. And JJ, and those guys that earn scholarships to their team. I'm trying to think, am I forgetting anybody? Oh yeah, Lonnie. He's had the best year in his entire career. He caught 2 touchdowns, an amazing head top last weekend. So everybody's doing good as far as like college goes. But again, that all goes back to they all wanted to win. They all wanted to be competitive, because that's what you need when you get to that next level. That's what's going to separate you, right? When you get to that next level, it's not always about who's the fastest, who's the strongest, because a lot of times that playing level is going to be evened out, and then it comes back to the intangibles, right? The things that you can't touch. So that winning mentality, that competitiveness, you can't touch that, right? But you got to have that in you if you want to be successful. So that's kind of a little bit of an outline of the culture here at New Wave. Obviously, there's a lot more that I can go into, but that just kind of lays the foundation of what we are and what we're about and what you're going to get when you come here, right? We're going to work you hard, but then also we're going to have some fun. We're going to compete, right? Turning the page to the Wave of Opportunity Foundation. We're going to be doing a turkey drive November 22nd. It's a Saturday. It's the Saturday before Thanksgiving. I think we're going to do 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., about 4 hours, right, where you can stop by our facility, You can drop off a turkey. I'm gonna put it in the back of my vehicle, my truck, and just kind of lay it out there. So then we'll take you down to a local partner, all that good stuff. And in the meantime, if you want to stop by, maybe we'll have some food. We'll do some some beanbag toss or something like that. We'll figure something out to keep you entertained while you're here. But just a great chance to be involved in the community, do something great around the holiday season for those in need, and really just make an impact on your community. And I think it also says a lot too, if like you're a parent, you're doing something like this. What are you showing your kids? What are you showing your kids when you go out there and you do something like that? I think it just sets a really good example. And so again, that's kind of what we're trying to do here at the Wave of Opportunity Foundation. Turning the page to the PLYO program, I kind of touched base on this last episode, but the PLYO program, what I think is going to happen this year, so this will be the third year that we're running it, right? Every year gets better and better. First year, some of the athletes that trained, they broke their school record for their vertical jump, because in like their PE classes and stuff like that, they measure vertical. Well, they did the PLYO program here and they broke their school record the first year. They set the record here at New Wave because it was the first year doing it. Well, last year, the first year's record got broken by some new kids that came in, right? They broke it. And so I expect that trend to continue. I expect the record to be broken from last year by new people this year, or guys that come back, you know what I mean? So records were meant to be broken, I guess. That's just kind of the trend that I see every year, is that we're continuing to set a new bar, a new expectation for what to get out of the results in this program. I kind of contribute that a little bit to the adjustments that I make each year. Each year I learn, each year I get better as far as like programming goes, and picking and choosing what things I want to keep and what things I want to replace or take out. And so, I just think that comes down to like reflecting and seeing what worked, what didn't work. And so that's how we continue to get better. And then obviously you got to research and continue to stay up to date on all your methods and all that good stuff. But I think it's going to be a great program. I know me and my producer were talking about like the availability of it. Look, this thing, right? We're getting down to the point where we're getting limited on our spots, right? And so there is a cap, right? It's not like everybody can come all at once, right? To the sessions, right? There is a cap. So if you're really considering doing this, right, you want to become a winner, you want to be in a competitive environment, you want to increase your explosiveness, your power, your vertical jump, you're thinking like, hey, I'm this close to dunking a basketball, I want to be able to dunk, right? Every athlete wants to do that. This is your chance. This is your opportunity. Don't miss out on it, okay? I'm telling you, this is a proven program that works, right? If you want proven, reliable results, this is your chance. You don't want to miss out, okay? But that's about it. All I'll say about the PLYO program. But we'll kind of turn the page to the Week 9 recap. Went to go watch Kennedy at home at Kingston Stadium take on Dallas Center Grimes. Very interesting game. It was one of the first Kennedy games I went to all year. Matter of fact, it was the only Kennedy game I went to all year. And I really wasn't quite sure what to expect. Obviously, last week I had a preview on it, and that was based on some of the box scores and stuff like that I put together. But the DCG, right, they were the 9th ranked team, so they're a top 10 team. Kennedy was like 3-5, I want to say, coming into it. They were like 6-2. DCG ended up winning 14-7. It was tied 7-7 the entire game, practically. The second half, it was tied all the way up until like 4 minutes left in the fourth. I'll tell you what, man, we'll talk about the game script for a second. Kennedy, they made a couple of early turnovers on defense. They forced a couple early turnovers that kept them in the game. Their defense played lights out all night. I think they gave up, I'll pull up some of the stats here. They gave up 74 passing yards. only 74 passing yards, right? Um, and then in the second half, like I said, it was 7-7, right? DCG was like, hey, well, we're just gonna possess the ball here. We're gonna play the field position game, and we're just gonna run the football. And they ended up with like 241 yards rushing in the game. Although they didn't score very many points, they scored enough points to get the win, right? Kennedy, they ran the ball. I want to say they ran it 27 times and they passed it 28 times. And I thought that one of the things I saw with the offense, their offense struggled. Like I said, their defense kept them in the game, but just offense could not get things going. A lot of 3 and outs, a lot of negative plays that pushed them back. And like I talked about, that field position game, it ultimately benefited DCG because of the punting, right? Punting was a big thing in this game. If you watch Iowa football back in the day, that's all they did, right? They played that field position game with like Torrey Taylor. They just punt, you know what I mean? And they rely on the other team to make a mistake and capitalize. Well, Kennedy, a lot of times they would, they run the ball on first down. They would get like 3 to 5 yards on the first carry. And then they would try to make the big play in the passing game. And they hit on a couple big plays, but ultimately not enough to, string together a drive. You know what I mean? They had a chance at the end, but they just could not get a consistent drive going throughout the second half. And so, the game script just kind of got out of hand that way. They weren't able to have that continuity on offense and execute. The execution was the big part. You know what I mean? If they were able to execute, I think that, they probably could have won that game about two or three touchdowns. You know what I mean? If they really strung together drives and just leaned on their defense, they easily could have won that game. But, I just think about, the seniors that, on that team. I've known a lot of those seniors for a few years now. And, I feel for them, obviously. But, I'm proud of the way that they competed in that game and they kept it close. You know what I mean? They competed the whole time. So I'm happy for them in that sense. So we'll see what's next for them. Obviously, their season's over, but, we'll see if they have anything going on in college and all that good stuff. So, so that's the end of the regular season football schedule for at least 5A and 4A, I believe. So let's talk about some playoffs, right? There's a handful of teams here locally, right, that ended up making the playoffs from all levels. We're going to highlight those real quick. So Iowa City Regina is going to take on Cascade, right? That's the alma mater, right? Cascade, shout out Cascade, man. They take on them at home. Obviously, I think Regina is going to win that one. They're like the #1 team. So no shade to Cascade, but, I got to go with Regina on that one. Albernet versus Walk-On. I've played Albernet and Walk-On before when I was at Cascade, so some more small schools. I got a couple players that play over at Albernet, so I got to go with Albernet on that one. Clear Lake versus Mount Vernon. Mount Vernon, I'm going to choose not Mount Vernon because of just the history of their program and how competitive they are. And I could say the same thing about Solon with them taking on Benton, right? Xavier versus Waverly Shell Rock. This is a rematch. I think we kind of all know how it went last time, but again, if you're Xavier, just stay focused, take care of business, and you should be on to the next round in the playoffs. Now, here's a good matchup here. Cedar Falls takes on Iowa City West, right? So West is going to have to go on the road to take on Cedar Falls. It's going to be a tough matchup, man. I know Cedar Falls always plays, physical. I don't know if Cedar Falls has played West. I think they have, and I think West has beat them, but don't quote me on that. But obviously, I got West in that one. Then we got Liberty versus, I believe it's Waukee, right? Waukee actually played Kennedy, and they almost, gave it away to Kennedy, right? So I'm going with Liberty in that one. And then we got Valley versus Prairie. Prairie goes on the road to West Des Moines Valley. Prairie, man, I don't know. That's a tough one, right? That's a tough one. But I do believe that anybody can beat anybody as long as you are able to execute, minimize any turnovers, and just play your best brand of football. That's what it's going to come down to. You got to be playing your best brand of football this time of year if you really want to move on and and make it to the dome. So obviously I want Prairie to win that one, so you don't gotta ask. So yeah, I guess we'll kind of see. We'll kind of keep track of how these playoff teams do, you know what I mean, throughout the postseason. But to all those teams that did not make the playoffs, you know, I obviously am curious to see what's going to change in the offseason. What did you learn? What can you do better this time? What went well for you? What can you build off of? And then just kind of seeing who's ready to get back to work. You know what I mean? It's that time of year where athletes are starting to hit us up. They're trying to get back into the swing of things. And it'll be interesting to see who comes through, you know what I mean, and who really wants to become a winner. So again, if that's you, look no further. New Wave, we're here for you. So all right, cool, man. Well, hey, look, thank you for joining us for episode 21 of New Wave Certified. I'm your host, John Larkin. We'll look forward to seeing you guys next time.